Okay, Sagrona Teema to my friend Sean Byrne, aka Modern Mythos. Sagrona Teema.
Sagrona Teema. I
Thank
almost
you.
didn't know what
Just
you were doing there for a sec.
waiting for you to say it back. Sean, you were on the pod to recap Severance. That was a whole lot of fun at the top of the year, but we have a new show that needed your eyeballs on it and your opinions on it, and that is Andor, the Star Wars spin-off, arguably the most successful Star Wars property currently going. I think that's inarguable, actually. I think that's just a fact. And maybe the most successful Star Wars spin-off, period. But maybe you want to debate me on that. Big Star Wars guy I got on, Sean Byrne. Tell me about Andor. What do you like about this show?
I'm stoked to be doing another breakdown with you on the show. You know, Severance was amazing and is amazing, and it's one of those mystery boxes where we're all kind of learning together, right? But as far as like these big IPs and franchises go, like Star Wars is supremely my shit. Like that's my wheelhouse. So I love Andor probably as much as anyone does in this world, in this franchise. I was very excited when they announced the season 2 because I wasn't sure that was even going to happen. I think Tony Gilroy is a gift to this franchise. I hope he never stops creating things once Andor has come and went. But I love this show. I'm so excited to keep breaking it down. And I hope that season 2 gets more eyeballs on it because I know season 1, like, maybe wasn't everyone's favorite thing because there's not like flashy lightsabers everywhere and Luke Skywalker cameos, but Andor is a near perfect TV show to me.
Adore this show to no end. Remember when it came out, I think in 2022, just being so shocked because we were coming off the heels of some pretty shitty Star Wars shows. I don't know if the Obi-Wan show was right then or a little bit after, but it was very bad. I didn't like it at all. The Mandalorian dropped off to me pretty quickly after a good first season. And also, this was kind of coming out during the time of Marvel shows being pretty bad as well. So this comes down the pike, and I have to believe in Tony Gilroy because Rogue One is a great movie that gets better and better with each rewatch that I don't think was even properly appreciated when it came out. It was new canon, right? It wasn't like Skywalker Saga. And I loved it because of that. And I remember they put Rogue One back in theaters ahead of the release of Andor Season 1. And I went with a friend. We saw it in IMAX. We got out of it older men than when the movie came out, you know, more mature, and just looked to each other and we were like, was that just the greatest thing ever? Like, to talk about Rogue One, we'll also get into Andor, but there's just a seriousness, there's a sweating of the details, there's thematic importance, there's political undercurrents. You don't think about these things when you talk about Star Wars. And we love Star Wars. We love the good versus evil, like the simplicity of it, the Force. Like, you love it even more than I do. But I go back with this franchise to when I can first remember seeing a movie in my life. Like, the purity of the story is amazing. But as I got older, and I don't want to speak for you, you can share your feeling. As I grew up, that wasn't enough to sustain me. And I needed to see a more sophisticated take on it. Now, I doubted if that would ever come because that's a risk. Like, that is a risk with an incredibly sensitive property, literally intellectual property, with a fan base that you know is nuts, maybe the craziest. I don't know, maybe potentially more crazy than the Marvel fan base.
They are. Yeah, they are.
Okay, so I still don't even understand or know how Star Wars fan base at large feels about Andor, but I don't care because I know how I feel, and I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I think like this show is a perfect example for how you elevate a franchise or how you elevate an IP and how you could differentiate parts of a franchise that don't have to be for everyone, right? I think there's like this sweeping declaration that I see sometimes in other franchises. And listen, look behind me, dude. I have Infinity War, I've, Avengers stuff, I have Baby Yoda. Like, I got franchise slop all over. I love that shit. I eat it up every single day. But it doesn't mean that everything has to be exactly the same. And I love the big movies, the good versus evil, the lightsabers, the fun quips. I love all that shit too. But then I also love sitting down and getting something to chew on within the world that I love as well. And I think that we deserve to get shows like this. And when I see Andor, I'm like, why can't we get more like this? Like, why is this franchise not treated this way? While also getting the cool stuff. Like, I love Mandalorian. It's like a Western. It's fun. It's a little more surface level. And then you can get Andor, and then we can keep building on this. You can do the same in Marvel, you can do the same in DC, same in Harry Potter. Like, you could do this stuff with all these franchises without alienating people. You can give different groups of people within a fan base stuff to love, and that's kind of like what comic books are. It's kind of like what, I don't know, all these different like anime is kind of like that. Like, there's so many different things for people to chew on. And I'm just so happy that Tony Gilroy decided to dive into this universe, because this is just, it's elevated. There's so much here, and watching these 3 episodes, like, you get reminded that, like, oh, this isn't just slop, man. Like, there's every camera angle is, like, the filmmaking is crisp. It's, yeah, I could go forever, but we need to get into this because I'm stoked.
We will go forever. We're going to cover the first 3 episodes of the new season. They're dropping episodes every Tuesday for the next 4 weeks in trios of 3, and we're going to cover them. So, just before we get into it, I just want to say that I hate the term Trojan horsing ideas into something like Trojan horse. I just find it pretty reductive. When the Russo brothers make Winter Soldier and they're saying this is a 70s political thriller, I'm like, sure, buddies, sure.
Careful, but I like that movie. Careful.
It's a fine movie, but it's still servicing the Marvel machine more than anything else. You can't even apply Trojan horse to this because it is already operating at a level above the horse, Like, it's not trying to sneak anything in. It is objectively political. It is mature.
And very timely, too.
Very timely.
I was shocked at how extremely timely the themes in these first 3 episodes were.
And Tony Gilroy ain't nobody's friend. That is a prickly motherfucker. He is incredibly intense. He's brilliant. He wrote all the Bourne movies. He wrote and directed Michael Clayton. God-tier screenwriter. But that guy gives no fucks. Like, he's going to make the story that he's most interested in. He ain't taking a note from Kathy Kennedy, who he has a good relationship with, by the way.
You have to have a good relationship, but you also have to put your foot down.
Do this.
Yeah.
But he's interested in ideas about freedom, about resistance against autocracy, the price of rebellion. These are ideas you get in the writing of Ho Chi Minh or Napoleon. Like, that's what he reads. That's his text. He doesn't care about the canon. And for someone like me who loves Star Wars but wants to see a more sophisticated version, that's just like catnip. That is the apotheosis of what to do with IP, like you said. So it just gets me so amped, and I love the show because, sure, you can make a boring, dry political thriller. I'll probably watch that. Hey, hands up here. You could also make Star Wars slop, and maybe I'll watch that too. You blend the two, and you're now elevating to a new plane of existence that just gets me so fired up.
Well said. Agreed.
Tony Gilroy wasn't always the choice for Andor. It was being kicked around with some other writers, and he read an early draft of it, and he sent this missive to Kathleen Kennedy saying that this sucks and that he has a better vision for it. And she was kind of indebted to him because he came in and saved Rogue One. Now, this is a little bit contested, but the fact of the matter is that Tony Gilroy came into Rogue One, helped with reshoots, helped with rewriting scenes, and ended up getting the credit for the screenplay and almost like stealing the movie away from Gareth Edwards. So it's a little dicey, but Rogue One turned out amazing. I think that gave Tony Gilroy insane leverage with Star Wars to be like, look, I fixed your movie. I think Rogue One made a bill.
Did it make a bill? Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Wow, that's crazy to me. I mean, I know it's Star Wars, but that movie making a bill is a big deal, I think.
So he let those nuts hang.
He dropped them on the table, man.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think of Rogue One? Can you just tell me in a sentence or two what you think of that movie?
Rogue One is sick. Rogue One is, I think, man, it's so hard. I'm doing a rewatch right now of all the movies.
Revenge of the Sith's back in theaters tomorrow.
I got my tickets for that.
Today.
I got my tickets
when
for
this episode
Saturday.
Releases. Nice.
I will be there as long as my wife doesn't go into labor. So we'll see if my unborn son wants to oblige me there.
There's some labor in that movie.
What if it times it perfectly with Padme? Wait a minute. All right, I'll have to talk to the universe about that one. Back to Rogue One. Rogue One is sick. Rogue One is awesome. I love Tony Gilroy. I would love one day to see or really hear like an op-ed about like how him, because I love Gareth Edwards. He's one of my favorite like up and coming directors. If I think he's kind of still in that window. I really like the 2014 Godzilla movie. I like the creator a lot more than most.
And we're not saying Rogue One was a piece of shit before.
No,
It probably
no.
It's probably still had the amazing bones of a great movie.
I think it's kind of like you get Gareth Edwards, who could do big blockbuster and like make big giant monsters and these big spaceships look crazy, and then you get Tony Gilroy to come in to be like, nah, we need to add much more depth to this, and then that's kind of your perfect movie. Rogue One's excellent. It's probably in my top 3 or 4 Star Wars movies, just kind of depending on the day. As far as filmmaking goes, it might be like top 2, to be honest with you. I think it's excellent. I remember watching that trailer, what was it, 2016 or 2015 or something?
The trailer was so good.
And like just hearing like the blaring of the sirens and seeing it, it's like red. I'm like, yeah, this is
best trailer.
This is just everything I ever wanted. So I love it. And the fact that they're doing a spin-off of it, I still see people, dude, bitch about how they're like, why are we getting an Andor show? We know how his story ends. And I'm like, do we watch franchise stuff anymore? Like, we're always piecing the shit together between movies and between shows and stuff. Like, just eat it up. When it's good, just eat it up. It's what we're here for. So
yeah, the 2 seasons of Andor, sadly this is it. You know, I mean, they're big monster seasons of 12 episodes each, but 2 seasons costing about $645 million, the 2 of them.
My God.
But if you break it down, each episode is roughly $27 million. Each episode's about 45 minutes to 50 minutes. So you're basically getting 8 movies of 120 minutes costing $50 million each, which, as Tony Gilroy reminded someone that asked him about this, that nudged him about this, he says, we're the most cost-efficient Star Wars makers out there.
He's so good, man.
He's so sharp.
And his little
I
comment, he's awesome. Obviously, like his stuff with the SAG
also
after
so
strikes.
handsome.
Yeah, we got to get him on the pod. Tony, come on the pod. And his explanation when he was on the red carpet for the premiere, where he was just like, yeah, I feel bad for the podcasters. They're going to have to cover a mini movie every single week. I was like, all right, Tony, let's get into this. Let's get into it.
But I am already kind of sad that this is the final season because Star Wars TV is sucking really hard. That just means we got to savor this extra. I have complicated feelings knowing that the ending of this is Rogue One, a movie that I love, but that there is a terminus point. So I don't know, but we'll see. I'm sure this season's going to be amazing. The ending will be crazy.
And it's kind of different where it's not like you know where the story ends, whatever. It's like, it's not just their story ending, like the characters are gone. So it's like, it's not just like, oh, you can imagine them like going off and doing something else that we'll never know. It's like, nah, this is their story and we've seen it complete. And it's impactful in that movie. And I've heard a lot of different reviews and stuff from people that have seen the full season that they're like, you got to watch Rogue One immediately after you watch the final episode here because it changes kind of your whole viewpoint of that movie. So I can't.
I will be.
Yo, yeah. I hope they put it in theaters or something. Like, that'd be awesome.
So how were these first 3 episodes for you before we dive into them in the minutia?
I think it was a nice way to kind of get back into this world again. Not just Star Wars, but this time period, the tension that they build, like, you know, how exciting all of it is while also being so nerve-wracking. I think like it was a perfect little slide in, be like, hey, remember this? Remember we're not just like, you know, shooting everybody and everything's going to work and we're the good guys and stuff. Like, there's a lot of tension here. There's a lot of good and bad. You know, you get a lot of the gray, introduce all the key players, you know, and it's kind of like nothing that really impactful yet. Like, you're kind of just seeing these smaller missions. There's nothing crazy, but you see like the character moments, which really hit for me in this. So I love the 3. I think they work really well together.
My arc was episode 1. Okay, I'm feeling it. We're back. Episode 2, you know, and then episode 3, I'm like, hell yes. Like, that's also like watching Andor is having to bear in mind this like 3 episode structure. This isn't like Game of Thrones where like you remember that one episode that did the crazy thing, or Severance, which we've talked about, of course, with like Chikai Bardo. Like, you're on a first name basis with the episode titles. Like, that's not really Andor because each set needs to be taken together. And I think of season 1, like the prison set. Like, that's how I talk about it. I don't say like, I don't remember their episode names. Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
in a way, like kind of the same way that, I don't know if you were the Clone Wars animated series guy, but the way that show works is just like people talk about the arcs of that show. And it's, you know, so, and I think like that's a cool way of doing it. It's like, yeah, like the prison arc is excellent. And I can't wait to see what the next arc in this is going to get us stoked for. Right.
Something cool to mention is that each arc is going to take place over the same amount of time of 3 days. So Tony Gilroy confirmed that in an interview. So this arc for these 3 episodes takes place over a weekend, but really it's that Chandrillin wedding that kind of provides the timeline and the structure. And it's a really smart way to make sure you're keeping track of all the plates spinning around.
Yep, agreed. And they kind of do the same with Cassian stranded, because you know that they're like they don't have food, so they're the clock is ticking there, and then like they keep waiting for the inspection on the other storyline. So it's like the clock is ticking on every single one, and it matches perfectly. It like just masterful.
All right, so let's get into the episodes. Andor season 2, episode 1, episode title. 1 year later, they're not thinking it through. They just wanted to get you right into it. The plot. Cassian infiltrates an Empire facility and escapes with a stolen TIE fighter, but a failed rendezvous with a rebel contact leaves him stranded with a weird group. Bix Colleen, off-world with other Ferrix refugees, struggles with trauma while staying under the radar. Elsewhere, the Empire begins planning a takeover of Gorman, and Mon Mothma prepares for her daughter's arranged wedding as Luthen unexpectedly arrives to the wedding. Let's start with the opening scene because it is a great one. I have some thoughts about it too. First of all, the lights go up and it looks like $1 trillion. Like it looks expensive AF. As you see the TIE fighter in this gleaming white Imperial hangar, there's a woman testing the fighter. What are you thinking this is about? Like in the opening moments before we see Andor.
Yeah, I think that's one of the experimental TIE fighters. It's escaping me right now, and it's going to really bug me. But that was like a very big storyline in some other, this other property in this time period. I think it's an interceptor, TIE interceptor maybe, and it looks incredible. Like, we'll get into some of these other planets and stuff that pop up, man, but holy shit, give them more money.
Yeah,
the money's obviously going... Same thing I said with Severance. I'm like, I don't care what it costs. You can see what the money's getting you. I thought it was excellent. The second I see it, it's kind of exactly where it went in my mind. I'm like, oh, we're just going to drop into like this, secret mission, or whether it, this person was involved, or whether Cassian was going to pop in like right after she left or whatever. But it's, I think it was a really cool way to introduce us, like show the world, flex the muscles a little bit, flex the CGI, and then get right into the character moment.
Right. This Imperial worker is a traitor helping the rebels, and that we see or meet Andor, and he's wearing a Imperial test fighter suit, like he's clearly going to steal the plane. What was interesting about this is before the action commences, Andor has to have this intimate moment with the girl, and he's giving the speech that he used to receive from others. And season 1 was really about him becoming a leader and not being such a cynical mercenary. Not only is he a true believer, but he's able to engender ideology into someone else. So I liked seeing that.
He's become like a veteran, Right. And that line he gives her, I forget what it is. It's something about fear, where he's just like, your fear can't hurt you, or you've overcome your fear now, or something. I was like, yeah, man, like this, he sounds like Luthen a little bit. There's like a little bit in there where you could tell like people are starting to look up to them. He's the leader, and people are looking to him for guidance, and that's just a really cool way to start the show.
So this smooth criminal gets into the plane, gets into the fighter jet, and it is a huge fail, which was a funny piece of irony.
Awesome.
But once he gets the machine going, it felt very much like the Star Wars trilogy arcade game, but like playing it in real life, which was great. More blockbustery than ever. And I don't think we've ever seen the show go this big. And I'm curious how he felt about it. Bond movies always start with big action scene. And I thought of how Bond films, they drop you in media res, and you're just like with it and no explanation, and it's big, and then it slows down. But I did think about how season 1 opened, which is him kind of facing down those 2 guards in the alleyway, and it's much darker and murkier and meaner. And I thought that this opening, while a lot of fun, opening with a bang, did lose a little bit of intimacy. Did you flag that at all, or were you all in?
I was kind of all in. Like, the show has to elevate, right? Or at least what Cassian is doing has to grow a bit. And I think it was kind of smart, to be honest, to just get right into some like a bigger moment where it's like, maybe some people are diving into the show and maybe they didn't love season 1, or maybe they're just, a casual and they're just watching season 2 because it's coming out or something. I think that'll catch people right away. I love the Blade Runner noir kind of stuff in the first season when, you're in that neon
such a great
cyberpunk
scene.
alleyway.
It's amazing.
He's all just like, that's very dark and stuff. I'm sure we'll get into some very dark stuff, but I think this also kind of gives a little development on Cassian, that he's kind of turning into a good guy here. Like, there's a little bit of that, like, they give him a humorous moment instead of like this dire moment, and he still like fucking obliterates these dudes like with this crazy cannons and stuff. But I hear what you're saying. It's definitely an interesting topic.
I was so happy to be back with the Andor house directorial style, if that makes sense, which I kind of picked up in the scene, was just reminded of, which is, it's very simple. It's these centered, symmetrical mid shots that often are accompanied by this very slow push in.
Yep.
It's very clear and clean. You know what I mean? Like it's just direct in a way that I appreciate. There's no average shot in Andor. And, you know, often the character will be shot from the back or from the front. It just has like a clarity that I really appreciate. These episodes, this block's directed by Ariel Kleiman is the name of the director. I just appreciate how consistent that is across the 2 seasons.
Do you remember the trailer from season 1 when they showed everyone kind of walking from behind?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's like their visual language, you know?
That's their signature.
It's like that, and then the push through things.
Right.
Like, and it hits for me. Like,
a little bit
funny.
Of Christopher Nolan.
They're trying, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's like, you can tell that they are trying to do something a little crafty, and it's not just like, all right, stationary, move the camera around to different people. It feels like you're floating, like you're right there with the characters. It's great.
Where should we go? Mina Rao or Shangela? You pick.
Let's do Mina Rao first.
Okay, Mina Rao is a farming planet with tons of wheat fields. Great example of just how considered the world building is in this show. We open on seeing Dr. Gorst kind of sneaking through the home, and I'm like, oh my God, please be a dream. Please be a nightmare, I should say, for Bix, and sure enough it is. Still very scary, showing how traumatized Bix is from listening to the screams of animal creatures or whatever happened to her last season.
God.
She's there with Will and Brazos, and I don't even know these supporting characters that well, but I also do. And so when we get to episode 3 and what occurs for them, I cared so much, and I was like shocked by my emotional involvement in them.
Yep.
How do I explain that? What does that come from?
I think it comes from an excellent filmmaker, man. I agree, because, you know, Will, I truly didn't give a shit about at the start of this, right? I like Brazos because he's cool.
Brazos cool, but
had some cool moments, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a cool fucking dude, but I didn't love him that much. You know, you like Bix more, obviously. She's more tied to Cassian, and there's more there, and she's an incredible actress. The world building is so excellent, and I know a lot of this is CGI. I'm sure a lot of this is the volume. But it looks so real, man. They do such a good job in this show to try to make things look real, and it matters to me. It feels like I could be there.
It could be real. It could be non-volume.
You think they planted all that corn like
I mean,
Nolan did for Interstellar?
Not all of it, but in the view of the camera, I think.
No, for sure.
For sure.
And I think it goes for a while. Like you could tell. I don't know if they're on location somewhere or if they just built these things, but it's incredible. And these like smaller moments with the characters and the tension that they keep looking for Cassian, and they're. I think you just like we love the Rebel story, and so you know, this is just like a cool new planet.
You know what it reminded me so much of, and I'm almost certain this was an inspiration, but it's Inglourious Bastards, especially the opening with Hans Landa on that farm. And there's a little more of Inglourious Bastards parallel coming up, but I thought this was really about, you know, literally hiding rebels, or hiding in the show undocumented worker rebels too. Yeah. So there's a new, different political relevance there.
Yeah, and it's so timely, as we were saying earlier. Like I don't know, you know, I'm that's kind of a timely topic anyway. But right now, in the last couple months, obviously, like the fact that they nailed that, I think it's going to stick with a lot of people. We'll
talk about that more in the episodes to come, but that's the intro there. Over in Shangela, we've heard of this place. We haven't been there yet in season 1. This is Mon Mothma's home planet. At the end of last season, she is agreeing to marry off her daughter to basically like a gangster's kid. It's a political marriage that she's setting up. I really found this fascinating because there's something interesting going on with how Mon Mothma, though she's obviously older than her daughter, is thinking and feeling younger, and has like that restless rebellion inside her, while everyone around her, her daughter, her husband Perrin, who's a shithead, they're all turning towards fundamentalism and the past and a conservative wealth, and this wedding like really exemplifies that so much. To me, it's kind of clearly showing that she's becoming disillusioned. She already was, but even more so with her life, and realizing what is the heart of the matter right now in the galaxy. and it's not this. So it's just very smart, and I love Genevieve O'Reilly. Like,
She's amazing.
They found a diamond with her. I know she was in Revenge of the Sith, and I know it's controversial because she had some scenes cut, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot cut from that movie.
But she's such a good actress. She could be my favorite performer in the show.
I think she might be mine right now, just with how, especially with third episode, we'll get there. But it was really cool to see Chandrila. I don't think we've seen it in any other visual media. It's been mentioned a lot in different stuff in comics, and it's definitely, I think it's been mentioned in maybe one of the animated shows in Rebels, I'm not sure. But yeah, seeing some more of the lore with Mon Mothma and the family, and I think it's a really great point about like the fundamentalist versus the rebel activity. And it's so interesting to show why we love it so much is because it shows you got to do some dirty shit. You got to get into the mud a little bit to accomplish some goals. And it's just like, it doesn't make any of this easy. It's not glamorous. And, you know, seeing all the struggle while there is the most glamour all over the place, it's just excellent.
Right. And what do you think when you heard that famous Skarsgård laugh?
That whole scene, man, it was excellent. Like, you know who's coming. Like, you know it. And I don't know if it was a...
I actually didn't.
I figured. I was just like, because she was so, like, pissed, but... And then she tells her assistant, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but he was just like, oh my god, you see who's here? And I don't know if it's a oneer or not, but it plays like one. And the whole, like, her trying to play the saying hi to everybody and whatever, and then she sees him, and he's got the wig on or whatever, he's got, like, the teeth out. So goddamn good. And she's just like, what are you doing here?
Right.
He's like, don't worry about me. Don't worry about me.
Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen, one of the best characters in the show. So a scene that kind of worked for me, kind of didn't. Maybe that's just because of how it was shot with the cross-cutting, was the reintroduction of director Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn. Now, really fascinating to be let into this room, both literally and metaphorically. Evil Empire planning rooms we've seen in Star Wars before. And I think most famously of Darth Vader doing the Force choke when he's pissed about something. I don't know which of the prequels that was in.
First.
Not even prequel, the real series.
Yeah. New Hope.
Can't even call that real. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I felt like the writers really relished writing this scene and crafting it and having us in there in this moment. It really reminded me of the Nazis having the Wannsee conference when they decided the final solution. And I thought immediately they're talking about the Death Star, but it seems to be a few plans prior to the Death Star. Were you thinking they were going to bring up the Death Star immediately?
So I know exactly what this is, and I won't spoil things for anyone. I don't even want to say what it's called because it's kind of a spoiler. But Gorman is a very big piece, and we hear little tidbits and sprinkles of what happened on Gorman from other media in Star Wars. And so the fact that they are going there, and the fact that this is the show to go there, and Tony Gilroy is the one to do it, again, won't say anything.
Makes you nervous and excited.
Should be extremely excited because he is a perfect person to handle something
well,
like
excited
this.
Because I'm sure it'll be epic, but
it'll be crazy.
I just know it's going to be like absolute genocidal devastation, probably.
Yeah.
And so you hear them talking about this in the room, and they have a plan. They're gonna, maybe drop some propaganda, or they're going to pay a rebel group to do something. Like, you just know it's going to spiral into something absolutely disgustingly evil. And that's how these conversations start. It's always like, oh, we'll just do this, and then suddenly you're killing off an entire planet. So I love these scenes because they're very icky. It's so nasty to see them kind of laughing and eating the lunch. Like, I love that detail of them just like a fat fucking Empire guy just
like, well,
eating some lunch between the meeting. Those propaganda fellas, those like Ministry of Enlightenment, that was so stupid. Love that moment with Krennic when he's like, he winks and he's like, okay, we get the idea.
Yeah, chill.
My question here is, what's with Dedra though? And maybe this is a spoiler and you know it, but my thing was thinking, and of course Dedra's back, played by Denise Guff, also an amazing actress, amazing performance. I'm thinking, is Dedra Gorman? Because she tenses up at this, and maybe she just doesn't like the plan and has something even more evil and effective in mind. But I also was wondering if maybe she's not on board with this.
Interesting.
I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
I think, like, the scene at large, kind of the way you explained it with, like, Nazi Germany, like, it kind of brought me right back to the Zone of Interest with some of the scenes that were in that movie.
Totally.
With how casual they were talking about potential genocide and massacres and stuff, right? And so that's kind of where I went with there. And they were like, the whole point of it, tying it back to the Death Star, is that they need something to coat,
Calcite.
Yeah, and they're like, and all it is just this thing that needs to coat. I forget what part of the Death Star it is. It's probably like,
I don't think they even say the word
like
Death Star.
Coat the reactors or something. Exactly.
Right.
But you know they're talking about like, oh yeah, we just got to use it basically to fucking paint over the Death Star, and they're gonna do whatever they have to this planet in order to do it. So it's like all very interesting to me. With Dedra, I don't know if that's the case. I'm glad I don't know, because she explicitly says later on that she didn't know her parents, right? And so maybe she did at some point.
She could make that up. She could be telling the truth. We don't know.
Yeah, maybe she was on that planet. She doesn't want anyone to know, whatever. And I think, yeah, like the fact that people are just like, it's going to feel like a demotion, but it's actually a big deal. Like, I don't know why he chose Dedra specifically. I mean, we know she's, can lay the hammer down, but she does feel...
She's incredibly good at being evil.
Being evil, yeah. And he just sees the prospect in that. But I wouldn't put it past Tony Gilroy to add some layers there, because she does feel very... I don't know. Maybe she just likes Coruscant and the cakes on Coruscant. She doesn't want to leave right now.
Episode wraps up with what's happening with Andor, and basically he landed on a planet. He's trying to meet his rendezvous, but his rendezvous isn't there. And who's there? These chucklehead rebels that are in a state of siege and starvation as their own plans have failed. And this was my like, come on, get on with it kind of feeling with these two episodes. Like I it's too strong a word to say I hated this aspect, but I was just so annoyed in these scenes. And frustration maybe is the name of the game with this setup. But I was like, just get out of here, Andor. Like, these idiots suck. I don't know what I really learned from that or took from that. And, we'll talk about it now as we get into episode 2. Do you have anything positive to say about that? Maybe you like those scenes. I don't know.
I think they're kind of played comical, or these guys are just idiots. And it shows how even though the rebels are funding them, he's just like, oh, you fucking idiots. Like, we're giving you guns and money, to fight this battle you're fighting. He's like, and they're like, who are you with? Who are you with? And he's like, you still don't get it. And yeah, I think it kind of shows and ties in that the Rebel Network still isn't the Rebel Network yet. The Rebel Network we see later in Star Wars Rebels, the show, and we see in, the original trilogy, they have to build up to that. They have to build up to congregating together and tying these networks together and not being in pockets all over the place and everyone sharing information. So were they a little
very
bit
realistic to world history, not every resistance movement. I mean, most aren't, well choreographed and well coordinated.
But it did drag. It did drag a little bit. There's maybe one or two scenes that I'm like, all right, man. It could have
felt a little silly and stupid.
It didn't really match the other two ongoing storylines.
Right. So let's get into episode 2. This is titled Sagrona Teema. And I think I really liked the first episode. This one was, I guess, a necessary lull and a calm down a bit. And then the third I loved. Let's get into the plot of this one. So Cassian is still stranded with this group of rebels as tensions mount and plans go awry. On Chandrila, Mon Mothma juggles wedding preparations with rising personal and political pressure, while Vel quietly probes for information. Meanwhile, Dedra returns to Coruscant and settles into her domestic routine with a special someone who we will talk about momentarily. We just talked about Andor and the rebels. Basically, the same thing continues here. It's this trench warfare between these two sides. I don't have much more to say besides I needed him to get out of there, PDQ, as they say, as soon as possible. I was like, why even wait an episode? Just start your flying over to the wheat planet.
I did like how elite it showed Andor in all of this.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my sole takeaway, where he's like, hey, dummies, it's raining. Maybe you go collect some rainwater, or hey, who's doing this? He's the one asking all the right questions and stuff. And
his getaway was good too.
It was great.
That was a good
he's able
scene.
to manipulate people, and he gets his blaster back, right? So there's I think that's kind of what I took from it, is that you see how the Rebel Alliance is not the Rebel Alliance yet. They're not together. They're kind of a shit show. But you do have some of these heroes and these legends of these rebels that are just way better, way cooler, way more elite of the group than others. So
that's a really good point.
Not much else to say there.
Over in Mina Rao, it's very obvious, but still very effective. But that I've seen it in so many movies and shows. I mentioned Inglourious Bastards, but the flirtation of the Nazi with the beautiful farm girl, or You know, in our case, I mean, Bix is a badass. She's an incredible mechanic. She is a little traumatized right now, but with Bix. In Inglourious Bastards, it's Frederick Zoller, played by Daniel Bruhl, and he's trying so hard to woo Shoshana, played by Melanie Laurent. He's unsuccessful, but it's humanizing, that character, and she uses his interest against him and all of the Nazis by burning them all down in the theater at the end. Spoilers for Inglourious Bastards. Much darker here, because even though this guy comes up, and I'm sorry I don't have this actor's name, but he was so good and so nasty, pretty quickly it goes south, it goes dark. What do you think of this developing, I don't want to call it a relationship because fuck that guy, but this developing tension between Bix and this corporal, this lieutenant?
In this second episode, I was just like, yeah, this makes sense as to, you know, like where this story might go. I didn't think it would go where it was going, where it ends up going. We'll talk about that in episode 3. I think it is interesting because, or at least he looks at Bix as like this like helpless farm girl, like you said, but we know that she's not that. And she's got like a lot more to her. So, you know, that was like more interesting to me, where I was just like, oh, he might think he has one over on this chick and he's going to get what he wants, but it's not going to work. It ends up, you know, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, and it kind of adds a layer to Star Wars that we normally don't get to.
No, it's a great point. It is so not Star Wars in the right kind of way.
I don't know if you saw some Twitter reaction to that.
No, I haven't.
Of that side of the fandom did not love it, but I'll bring that up when we get to that.
Yeah. Talk about not loving versus loving. How do you feel about Cyril?
I don't know, and I hate to say, I hate to be like not committal about it, but I think he's a fun character. But I'm like, I got to see some more from him.
I love Cyril.
He just feels so. It's funny.
Cyril.
He's funny, but I'm like, what is his role in this? Like, what is it going to be? He's so neutered, and I know that's his role, right? If it's just like the him and his mom stuff over and over again, and it probably won't be based on what happens, but I don't know. He's fun.
He's the ultimate bureaucrat. For every Nazi with a gun, there's even more of them with paperwork, you know? And I feel like that's the role he's playing. He's the bureaucrat. And to get an empire going, you need so many Cyrils like that.
Yeah.
Not all of them are now dating one of the top evil ladies of the empire. You know, when you see him in that room, you can ostensibly believe those are all people paper pushing for the empire in some way or shape.
That's what he was doing, right? That was the whole speech that he gave. He's just, it's like, there's a future here for those who dare. You know, his like great little speech to the intern coming into the
So I just love him for what he brings to the show as like a new color to paint with, a new aspect.
We've never seen that before with the Empire,
right.
So I agree. It's just that like sometimes I get frustrated watching him, so I'm like,
no, he's frustrating. He's annoying, but yeah. I kind of like him for exactly that.
Fair.
I want to talk about the emotional journey of Mon Mothma and tracking that. I love this line that she said to Vel when they're like on this hike. When Vel's talking about Cinta and that relationship not quite working out, and Mon says, there's work to be done, but we have to live to do it, which I think is just a great point about rebellion, but also any type of work. Like, if you're not touching grass every now and then, you can't do the hard work. And it's interesting to hear Mon say this, but maybe not even follow her own philosophy, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the irony here. I really like this point because it's speaking to the emotional side of rebellion that I think we take for granted when we want big set pieces. And it's just a great example of what makes Andor so special. So a small thing, but I really like that.
That was very Game of Thrones-y scene to me. It's kind of like, you know, like a small character moment where, you know, maybe they're, you know, you have a hero character in the Capitol, you know, and they're like talking about, you know, hiding what they're doing or like having like a deeper meaning conversation. Like, you don't get those kind of combos in a Star Wars property. So I appreciate these little things and these nuances when they come around, because that could have just been like a stupid scene of them being like, oh, remember when you were little? Like, you know, it could have just been like that. But they took it a step further, and that's why I love this show. It always takes it that extra step.
I mean, talk about nuance. I didn't even know what was going on, really, when it comes to Tay, her banker, and Mon.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this a lot.
Of that was or is. So I'll just set it up, and then I'm curious your thoughts. But Tay is her banker and her ex-boyfriend, and just like an old friend, and seems like such a sweet guy in the first season, and really so helpful to Mon Mothma in a tough spot in season 1. And here at this wedding, there's the hint or implication and then the confirmation that he's made some bad investments, that he's drinking, that he might be an alcoholic, that he might be blinded by his love for Mon Mothma, which seems pretty obvious. All of these things are swirling to suggest that this guy who seemed like a rock is not so reliable anymore. Now, was that all clear to you immediately, or did that come to you slowly? And what do you think of their relationship, and then how Luthen figures into it?
I loved this storyline. I think it might be one of my favorite storylines of these 3 episodes. And I think it really makes like Mon's story so interesting to me. Like her conflict. It's, you know, like you said, like how great he was and how much of a help he was in season 1. You could just see how fast that could flip and how people can change. And it's like Luthen is like, you can't rely on people. Like you just cannot. Like, and him being there, obviously, like I love all these like mini shots of him like walking in the distance, and you see him like analyzing what Tay is up to. And Luthen. Yeah. And you like see all these like he's doing his dirty work while also playing, you know, the museum curator.
Sorry to interrupt you, but Stellan Skarsgård is so amazing because he seems so amiable and jovial 1 second, and then when he hits you with the glare, like, you know he's a killer.
The code switch is crazy.
And for an actor to be able to do that is just awesome.
I agree. And for him to play off Mon in this at the wedding, which was awesome, and then with Tay kind of unraveling, I was a little confused as to like, and I don't think they even really dive into it. Like they don't really explain it. Like,
no, it's so fair. Like, it's so subtextual.
Like he's like the foundation is there, but I don't know. Like but then he's talking like he's so jealous of everything that he's seeing, and he's like unraveling because of this like rich ass wedding that everyone keeps saying like, oh, we haven't seen one like this in decades or whatever. And he's just like, oh, would have been nice to if I had this money. Like he keeps like sneaking these little comments. People keep talking about how he's a drunk and he's getting carried home and shit. Like, I knew exactly where this was going the second I saw that, and I was just like, "Oh, this is going to be excellent storytelling," and it was.
Right. So with that, let's get into episode 3. Amazing episode. It is titled Harvest. It is about the wrapping up of these storylines. We have the final day of Mon Mothma's child Lita's wedding. We have a dinner between Dedra, Cyril, and Cyril's mother. We have everything coming to a head on Mina Rao. And let's start with Mon Mothma, because I think that's how the episode starts. You know, I mentioned that she's dispensing her philosophy to her sister in the second episode, when maybe she should be taking it in herself. And this is another scene of that, where she's projecting her feelings onto her daughter. But she's not getting her daughter. Her daughter's gone. She's a fundamentalist. She's a creepy conservative. She's got those braids. She wants to sing the songs, dance with their 14-year-old child husband. Mon doesn't want that. It's another point of Mon just ready to cut off her family. Now, you're the perfect guy to ask this, because when we see Mon Mothma later in the series, when she's a different actress, when she's older, and when we see her in Rogue One, she's hardcore. And that woman, there is just no shot that she has her family around her when we meet her later on, because there's no time for that. And you could just imagine politically, philosophically, she's divided off from that so far. So I was quite curious, thinking like, how do we get to that woman? Were you thinking about that at all?
Yeah, because you know where her story goes. Like it's part of the fun of having these series and movies and within the timeline, because you can kind of piece together like, how does this person get from A to B? Because there's so much to do in here. In my opinion, an episode like episode 3 drives you right down that path, because she's trying to do these things. She's like, thinks she could maybe help her daughter. She thinks she's doing these things that maybe she heard when she was younger, and she's getting rejected. And, you know, her childhood friend is failing her, and she might not even really care about her family this next, you know, trio of episodes.
She has to like kill off part of herself.
Yeah, you got to strip that away.
Again, it's so clear, but it's just really great to see the pomp and circumstance of the wedding and how false that rings to her, to Luthen. Just amazing to show that contrast, I guess I want to add. Let's talk about underratedly my favorite scene in these episodes, which is dinner with Cyril's mother. Love it. Give me all of it. Starts off, though, preparations for the dinner. We meet our villains, which I don't... Did we gloss over it? Like that Dedra and Cyril are dating now.
We just kind of accepted that. We're like, yeah, this makes sense.
You know what they say is that when two awful people find each other, that's sparing the hearts and souls of two innocent people. So maybe their coming together is a nice thing for some people that don't have to deal with Cyril and Dedra on the outside.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
We get this like vibey lounge jazz playing, and before the dinner, the preparations of Dedra, we get Dedra in the mirror basically saying to herself, oh, which Nazi trench coat should I wear tonight? And then plastering on that fake smile. And then the doorbell rings, and I know who's coming through that door. And it's Cyril's mother, Edie, played by the wonderful Catherine Hunter. Now, this isn't so helpful for the plot. I concede that. But I was just delighted by this scene, by the performances, by the crazy comedy that it was mining. I loved all of it. What did you think about this scene? Did it distract you, or were you enjoying yourself?
Nah, I'm enjoying it. Like, I like this world building stuff. Like, I think part of the reason why I like the show is because it lets you live with the villains the same way you live with the heroes, and it gives you the both sides of things. And it doesn't really say like, hey, these are good guys too. It just says like, hey, villains have day-to-day life as well. Edie is so funny, man. Like, so amazing. Such like a mother figure. Like, stereotypical, but also plays it so well. Cyril reacts to her like he's this guttural, like he wants to throw up all the time. And
so there's a moment she's like stabbing at a dessert, and then it cuts to him, and he just makes a face like, oh my god, I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah, he's just like, you could just tell like that the way that guy played his anxiety and his like stress was so good. And I love the power dynamic between the three, because you could tell that like she's the type of woman, at least at this stage in her life, that she's just like, she's lonely, and she like manipulates her like mommy's boy's son to like get what she wants. He's like, you know, and visit her and stay on Coruscant for the fucking cakes instead of, you know, chase his little dreams or whatever, and like keeps like belittling him. Dedra snaps that out like immediately. Like, I love that little, like, she's like analyzing what's happening.
Yeah.
And the second this man goes to like lie down on his bed.
Yeah, he takes a nap.
Like this.
He's
this
like,
poor guy.
He's tapping out. He's like, I need a nap. He comes back, and it's been
she's
settled.
laid down the law, man. And I love that. Like, and I think like that's kind of, you know, not that everyone has that relationship with, you know, in-laws or anything. I certainly don't. But like, you know, I've heard of like horror stories where it's like, you know, people like, oh, you know, sometimes you got to lay down the law with like the older relatives, or like you got to talk and be like, we're not doing this stress bullshit anymore. Like, what do we need to do to solve this? Like, I'll make sure he calls you twice a week,
right,
and he'll visit you twice a month. Can we stop this? Can you tell him you're proud of him, please? And like, he just like comes out like a little boy out of his room after having like a tantrum, and it's like everything's solved, and he's like, oh my god, it's great.
So good. Very funny. Back to the wedding. You know, we've been talking over this episode about what Chandrila represents, and I think a great way to show that was Luthen here. So he's there at the wedding because he's procured this really famous special statue, and he presents it, and you see the thing, and it's such a trifle. It's like, who the fuck cares? And all the Chandrilans like love the statue, and Luthen like couldn't care less. And what he is there more excited to do is like, he hears that someone's in the Navy, and he's like, oh, where are you moving your troops?
Good.
He talks to someone else. He says, oh, well, I just moved from Naboo. And he's like, how are things going over there? Like, he doesn't care about this statue, as all the Chandrilans ooh and ah over it. He's there to try to find informants, find sources. And
that
I love that
delivery,
he's all business.
Dude, when he like does like the lean in when he's talking to the kid about like moving stations, like, where are you guys going? Just like his eyes light up. I'm like, I love Stellan Skarsgård, man.
That's what he would do, though. That's what Luthen would do at this wedding, right?
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he's just like this like crazy zany like museum like artist, you know, just like, I don't know. It fits the character perfectly.
Back to Mon. She doesn't say go kill Tay to Luthen, but her not saying it is saying it. And the lack of fight she puts up to Luthen says to me, she's okaying it. She knows like it needs to be done, but she's obviously devastated. And she throws herself into the dancing, into the drinking, because I think she's very sure of what Luthen now is going to do. And it reminded me of that meme of the girl doing the TikTok while crying.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that was Mon, basically. And
the intercutting between like everything that's happening here, and we'll get to the other segments, but I thought it was masterful, man. Like the way that the tension was rising between the wedding and what's happening on the farming planet. And
I couldn't believe it.
Dude,
I couldn't believe it.
I was
how
like,
these plates were being spun.
We were witnessing like mastercraft right there. I was just like so excited.
I thought the same thing. That like upbeat song is playing, and
Incredible.
it's such a strange soundtrack choice, because you'd expect some big orchestral thing, because that's what we know from Star Wars, but instead it's almost like a Star Wars galaxy canon pop song.
Yeah, it works.
Which is awesome choice.
They exist too, you know, like there's a video game from Respawn, the Star Wars Jedi series, and in Jedi Survivor they kind of introduced like a bunch of different like musical elements to it. Like you kind of hear like grunge rock and shit in Star Wars, and you see some bands and stuff, and it's fun little side missions in the game. But like these things can all exist. And so when I see the disco ball come in, basically the disco droid, whatever you want to call it, it's just like, I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. Like this is like, of course something like this would exist. The song works, and it works with the tension rising.
And what do you think about what Mon does? How she throws herself into that?
So I like the scene before that, when she's talking to Tay, once she realizes that Tay is off his rocker, there's no saving this, that he's just going to keep pestering for more money. He admits that he wants to learn from the gangsters of this planet, basically. Like, Luthen's like, yeah, he's been pestering them too. So she's like devastated that she knows where this is going. And I don't think she like approved the killing of Tay so much as she knew that it was happening regardless if she approved or not. And she knew that it was out of her hands, but she knew that she had to be okay with it, is maybe like what I took from it. And so the throwing of herself, like the drinking's one thing. Like the drinking's one thing. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But I've really loved the dancing and her crying through it. And she's just like, she's letting herself go with this music in the background and in this event where she's allowed to do that, and it doesn't look crazy, and her husband kind of notices it, and like she's finally releasing some of this energy, and maybe it's negative energy or whatever it is, but I was like swelling with emotion in this. I'm like, this is, I just felt like it was a powerful scene.
Yeah. I don't know what's next for her. I mean, there's obviously more episodes, and is she done with Chandrila, or does she need to keep up the ruse longer? If part of her was killed off in this transaction, in this killing, in this wedding, and all of it, is her dancing like this, I'm just done with this shit, and I'm all rebellion now.
I don't know if we'll see Chandrila again. I don't know if we'll see I mean, I'm sure we'll see her family again, but I think like this was kind of just showing us like, all right, this is where she's from, this is her core, this is what she has to give up, and this is what she has to sacrifice in order to continue the rebellion and build that side of her. So I don't know, like, if, you know, maybe she goes right back to Coruscant. Like, I don't know where she'll be stationed after this and what, like, her role is going to be. Obviously, it's a big one, but very curious as to how it ties into the larger plot.
Yeah. The cherry on top of this scene is a very chilling moment of Tay going into the car. And who is the driver? It's Cinta, who we haven't seen, who's like the nastiest killer in the show, probably, for the rebellion, I'll add, you know, but like the assassin. And it's actually Vel, her girlfriend, who sees her. Like the plates are already being spun so perfectly, and then I see that, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like The Godfather. That's like espionage shit. Like just like the quick flash of the killer taking the mark into the vehicle. Yep. Love it.
Do you think Luthen planned on her being, like, do you think she was there the whole time just in case, or do you think they called her in?
I think they called her in. I think Luthen called that in to Clea, who got Cinta over.
I was like the Leo meme right there. I was just like pointing at my screen. I was like, wait, who is that? Who is it? Who is that? And then I recognized it. I was like, oh shit. I knew
also
they were
very elegant not to show the killing. We know what's going down.
Yeah, you just see him kind of smiling and driving off, and you know what's happening, and you see that, you know, her girlfriend just sitting there, and like everyone knows what's happening, and everyone's just sad and upset, and
so good.
Ugh.
But that's not even the whole episode, because we got to wrap up talking about what goes down on that Wheatfield planet. First of all, we get Will having that like Terrence Malick moment in the Wheatfield. Very beautiful. I guess I'm just reminded, and this gets to the core of Star Wars, like the original movies. Like, this is not just sci-fi. It is a saga. It is a space opera. That's what people call it. There is romance in it, and I think that there's an emphasizing of grand sweep and emotion and romance, especially in this second season. I'm already sensing that from these episodes. So Will, like you said, I don't care about Will, but like suddenly, God damn it, I'm caring about him. As for Bix, the lieutenant advances on her more, and you're like, okay, this is pretty rapey. And then suddenly, yeah, it's rapey. And Tony Gilroy is not shying away from that word and what it is. And Bix even says he tried to rape me. And it was maybe like the rawest, realest scene I've witnessed in Star Wars yet. The real world and its horror entering the show, entering this IP. I was kind of shocked that it went there, but it did make sense. I mean, what did you think about this?
I thought this whole scene and the way it shapes up and the way all the set pieces get into place was really interesting, really masterful. Like, the young man in the rebellion goes off to say goodbye to his girl one last time, but he does that, and that means, like, the dad of the group has to go out and go find him because shit's hitting the fan, which, you know, that's probably not going to end well, like, because he's the good guy and, like, whatever, like, and then that leaves her alone, and I instantly, and I was, like, he was, like, set 2 plates aside, I was like, man, like, you know what's going to happen here, and I didn't know they'd go this far, obviously, and I am... Sounds very weird to say. I'm glad they did, because I think it's an important thing that we shouldn't shy away from. Like, this isn't a kid's show. Andor's not a kid's show. It doesn't have to be a kid's show. Your kids should not be watching Andor. Your kids can go watch Mandalorian, and that'll be okay. That's a family-friendly show. Maybe there's some elevated stuff in there, but you're fine. Andor is not a show like that. Andor is your HBO show. Kids go to bed. I'm putting this on at 9 o'clock, and we're watching. And I think the fact that Star Wars will often shy away from saying things, saying the words of what's going to happen, and they would rather insinuate, be like, oh, we'll let the older audience kind of know what happens here, but shy away from the younger kids so they don't hear the word or whatever. The fact that she's just like, no, he just tried to rape me was really powerful to me, and I was just like, I cannot believe they went there. I'm glad they did. I saw a bunch of fucking idiots online being like, Star Wars is better than this, and like, my Star Wars doesn't have, like, this isn't, you know, like, we shouldn't stand for this, and I'm like, are you dense? Like, this is important storytelling.
I think that's exactly proving why it's included.
Agreed. I
think Tony Gilroy does nothing gratuitously. The scene doesn't feel gratuitous. He understands fully the implications of saying that word, of including this scene, and of knowing history and how power exploits all the time. And whether that manifests in a genocide or sexual assault or just so many like, it's so considered. So to think this is tossed off is, you know, you're proving the point. You are the error here.
I agreed. It was like an earned scene, and the whole show is trying to show these nuances of the Empire, and they're not just like, you know, stormtroopers who can't shoot straight. Like, there are evil people at every level in the bureaucracy, in the lieutenant's room, on these random fields, on random planets. They even say it, like, you know, the one guy that's helping them, he was like, you need to tell who you're working with, like, what's happening here. And he's like, this is happening everywhere. Like, there's no, like, you're not, like, this planet isn't special. Like, this is happening on every planet. So, you know, I think it's important to show this kind of stuff in a serious show about Star Wars, and it elevates the property for me, because they're not shying away from shit. And if you don't shy away from that, there's not many things you will shy away from.
Very well said. On a more exciting note, stormtroopers in a wheat field looked pretty fucking sick.
So good. Cinematography's excellent in this show.
I remember when the Rogue One trailer played, and there's the stormtroopers wading through like the tropical waters. And I'm like, sick. Like, just put stormtroopers on ice planets. Wheat fields is a new one.
Yep.
But the choreography of this action sequence was fantastic. Thank God Andor returns. We knew he would, but it was still great. And that delayed gratification did feel good there. But holy shit, I teared up when Brasso died. I don't even know that guy. I love him so much. The scene was staged so well. It felt so earned. And it was just part of this cumulative effect of 2 episodes prior, of last season, the intensity of the moment. I thought it was fantastic.
He is such a good guy, and just such like a hell yeah kind of guy too.
Right.
Like, he's making the hard decisions, but he's doing it well. He's keeping the team together. He's keeping morale high. He's helping the people that have helped them on this planet. Like, he like makes it seem like they threw him under the bus, and like to try and protect that family, to see if he can. Who knows if it will, but he's trying, you know. And like, they paint this picture even in season 1, like, this guy just wants to help people and protect people and keep people out of harm's way. And the fact that, like, this scene, the way it plays out, is like, I wasn't sure if he was going to die here or not. I was a little nervous for all 3 of our characters. I figured someone was.
Right.
And I thought it would have been really dark if Bix did, you know, if she like succeeds in like winning her battle, but then she does at the end. Like, I thought that would have sucked really bad. So I'm glad
that's interesting. You thought or knew someone was going to die, and that speaks to the maturity and
the show
HBO-ness of the show. Yeah.
It's like you're like, they're not building this moment up for nothing, like, because they know it needs a payoff, or there needs to be consequence to something like this, and it's the good guys don't always just come out on top without any scratches.
The antidote to the Chewbacca's back.
Exactly. It's not just
from
it's just-
Revenge of the Sith.
Yep. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, the emotion was high. It got some tears out of me. You know, seeing how it's going to affect all the characters is probably going to, I'm really excited to see how it affects Bix through all this.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's super fucked up right now. Like,
she's going through
all
it.
the stuff that she's gone through the last, season and 3 episodes is nuts. And I think like it's just going to harden Cassian more, and this found family he has, like it's going to start to lose all these people.
Yeah.
Because they don't exist when in Rogue One.
That's literally the segue I wanted to do and talk about. So my question next is, what do you want to see in the episodes ahead? And my primary question is, how much will Star Wars bleed into the story? Season 1 is so unencumbered by the franchise, but this has to set up Rogue One, like you're saying. So how does it do that? And will the act of doing that rub me the wrong way?
So I think that in these 3 episodes, they've shown me at least that, I don't know if it's Gilroy himself, will, whatever their partnership is in this room with all the Disney heads and Lucasfilm heads, like, the ability to put the world building and the lore of Star Wars and keep the franchise heads happy while also telling an important story without being bogged down by it's really masterful to me. And I think the fact they're showing these planets, they're mentioning Gorman, they're building up to these big moments in the canon that we haven't seen yet, but we know they exist. And I think that seeing the pieces tie in, I don't know if it's going to get very Star Wars heavy. Like, we know we're going to get there. Like, I'm sure the final arc, in the final 3 episodes is going to be insane. I think building up to that, we're still going to see these really small moments on Coruscant, maybe some new planets here. We're probably done with Chandrilla, but we'll see some other cool planet that I'll be able to point at the screen and be like, oh, I read that word once in that book, And I think they do that stuff well, but there's a reason for it. So I don't know if we're really going to dive too much into like crazy bombastic.
It's a good point, and it's not like the show has to do the scaffolding to reintroduce Luke Skywalker or Leia.
Like there's no Jedi stuff here.
If it's teeing up anything, it's teeing up a movie we agree is amazing, which is Rogue One, which is very not Star Wars.
We might see them like build the team a little bit. We might be some these characters from this we might see pop up, or see the ties to that, or how they got all these ships for this, or how the rebel alliances are coming together a little bit more, these pockets are becoming groups. Like, you might see some of that stuff, and we might be like, oh, I see where this is going, but I don't think we're gonna get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see Forrest Whitaker's character, Saw Gerrero. That's almost guaranteed. But I'm curious, like, if Riz Ahmed or Donnie Yen, like, these actors show up in Rogue One, they could be here. I'm curious if we'll see Emperor Palpatine.
I think it'll be heavily alluded to. Are we going to see way more of the Death Star in this? You know what I mean? Like, how, I don't know. Yeah.
Especially if each trio of episodes is jumping a year. Like,
a year.
Shit's gonna happen.
I'm very excited to see more of the Death Star plans.
I think of the characters we have, of course, I'm curious about Bix. She's not in Rogue One. What happens to her? Probably something not good.
Yep. Protect Bix.
But I am thinking about Luthen, I think, most.
Yeah.
What happens to him? I think he's going to die, but how? And will it be something spectacularly epic? I imagine it to be.
That'd be that's such an interesting. I agree. Like, what's the end for all of these characters? Like, I don't know if it's death for all of them. We know they don't pop up in the movies because they didn't obviously exist at those points. But like, how do they intertwine that? Like, in the animated stuff, like Ahsoka's there, and it's like Ahsoka doesn't pop up in the movies, but the storytelling still works. They managed to make it work. So it's not like she dies, and then it's like, okay, that's she's just off somewhere else. Like, they could do that with other characters, and I don't think they'll do that with Luthen. I think Luthen is goner at some point, and he knows that, and he'll probably, I don't know, I can see him like burning his shop down or something as they're like coming to get him or something like that. But I like some of these other characters like Dedra and stuff, like she could still be around. Like, I don't know what the end's gonna be. I'm so happy to be back in this show, man.
I know. And now like my only issue is that I want to race and rush forward and watch all of these today.
Yep.
But they're so good that I want to savor them, and that's when you got a great show.
Yep. It's got to be one of the best shows on TV right now. I don't care what people say. It's not just.
Do you want to do a little "What are the idiots saying" corner before we go?
Let's
do
it.
Go for it.
Okay. I see people being like calling this a Star Wars slop. Shut the fuck up. To be honest
Literally
with you,
doesn't make sense.
Watch the show. Like, stop grifting online. That's just annoying. But some of the idiot stuff with Star Wars Theory is a guy who like used to be cool with Star Wars, used to make great content, and then turned to grifting, right? And now all these people are kind of following that same path, and they're like gatekeeping Star Wars. they're like, this isn't what Star Wars is, specifically with like the rape scene and stuff. And I'm like, what do you want from this franchise? There's a whole group of people that I just don't understand what the fuck you want from this franchise. Is it just CGI Luke Skywalker swinging a lightsaber around with older Ahsoka and a Wookiee next to him and like pointing at the screen and clapping? That's fine. That's what we want. Talk about that, whatever. But like to shit on things that you don't think fit in your franchise is so frustrating to me. When someone as smart and gifted as Tony Gilroy, he's a gift to you right now. Like, accept him with open arms. And this does well, he'll probably make more in Star Wars. I could see him doing like another property in this, like down the line at some point. And I just get so frustrated. I think the online conversation, like, there's a whole group of Star Wars fans who don't like Andor because they don't think it fits in the franchise, whether it is for the seriousness of it, whether it is because there's lack of Star Wars lightsabers and shit in there, because there's no glub shitos in it, like, you know what I mean? Like, and to me, there are some of that in there. So I'm, like, blocking people every single day on Twitter because I just can't, I don't want to be in that discourse anymore.
I know what I want, and it's just more Andor. I mean, I think this show's a miracle, I think, but even calling it a miracle underrates just the amount of work and detail that goes into it. I think it's just the platonic ideal of what to do with IP 2025. I love it so much. Like, talking it through, like, wow, did we uncover so many stones? There's so much to talk about. Could have gone even longer about the political undercurrents, but
yeah,
I mean,
big,
just
yeah,
amazing
even
stuff.
on that, we didn't even touch on that. You know what I mean? It's like all the illegal immigration stuff and how they're doing it, and even how the Empire's like, oh, there's so much nuance here because like shit's got to get done, and our people don't really want to do it, and you guys will do it, but you know, what am I supposed to do? And then he uses that power to throw around to get what he wants. Like, this is your North Star. If you're a franchise, look at Andor. And not everything needs to be this. Sometimes you could do Mando.
Not everyone's Tony Gilroy either. I mean, these creators don't grow on trees.
You have to, if they want to do things in your property, you take the guardrails off, you give them the keys, and you get the fuck out of the way, and special shit happens, and that's what's happening here.
Well, what a perfect way to end this. I can't wait to talk about this show the rest of the season. Sean, thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Let's go.